All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Inner Joint. This is a show where we dive deep into the world of data governance and data management. I'm your host, Shinji Kim, the founder and CEO of SelectStar. SelectStar is a data discovery and governance platform with an automated data catalog, lineage, and documentation. So today, I'm very excited to have Snehal Karanjkar from Kong. He runs the data analytics and the engineering team at Kong, who we have worked also with when he used to be at product board. Today we are actually doing it in a little bit of a different format. We're starting today. We're starting to focus on more of the teams that are running data, or in the practitioner point of view, what is important around data discovery, data governance, and overall data maturity in the organization, and have them to actually share what they've done in their own respective organizations on getting their data catalog adopted, how they've utilized it, and also made the business impact in their actual companies. So I'm really excited to have Snehal to go through this with us today. Please comment on the chat if you have any questions for Snehal or myself during the show. And Snehal, welcome to Inner Joy.
Hey, thank you, Shinji.
Awesome.
Excited.
So since you put together some slides, and this is also the interesting new format, I would love to have you go through the presentation to give the background and really the deep dive of what you guys have done at Product Board.
Sounds great. So, hey everyone, we're excited to chat about how data teams actually use data catalog. As Shinji mentioned, I've used SelectStar personally in my previous company. I'm currently at Kong. I was at Product Board for a few years, and that's where I used it. So, first off, just a little bit about myself. I've been in this space for about 12 plus years now. I did my master's from USC, and since then I've been fortunate to work in different areas of analytics and data science. I started in the e-commerce space working for Macy's.com, and eventually moved on to traditional SaaS companies. One of the instrumental companies that I worked for was Dropbox. I joined Dropbox pre-IPO and led their data science team for a couple of pillars. One of the major ones being chat. We introduced chat on Dropbox Teams, and we were trying to understand like how we can influence the conversion based on just the light touch sales with chat. And after that, I got an opportunity to lead analytics at Product Board. When I joined Product Board, it was a fairly young company, and there was a lot of opportunity. Some people had migrated from Dropbox to Product Board, so I thought that was exciting. I started off leading just sales and CS analytics, and eventually grew my team to lead all aspects of analytics within Product Board, be it marketing, growth, product, a little bit of people analytics as well. And eventually, when we kind of consolidated all the efforts, I started leading the data engineering efforts as well at Product Board. I am currently at Kong. I lead data science, analytics, and data engineering there. Again, we are again in a similar space as Product Board, where we are a young company. We are trying to make an impact, and we are trying to build creative solutions with data to make sure that we are building um, feedback loop and data is actually driving the business forward rather than just being the reporting mechanism at the company. So with that being said, I'll be talking mostly about my Product Board experience because that's where I actually use SelectStar. I am itching to use it at Kong as well, but I'm figuring out the logistics at the moment. But with that, yeah, we can jump in. As I mentioned at Product Board, it was quite a journey. Starting off with like 150 people at the company, data was data was the backbone. But as we started doing good work, we realized that there are so many other aspects within Product Board that do not have like data-driven decision making. So we grew the team, started taking on different aspects. And what I realized was when you're working for a data hungry organization, there are a lot of like curious questions rather than like really formulated questions like how would this impact, but the questions are more like, can you give me this data? And once we give this data, then they'll try to figure out if this is going to be even useful or not. So I think there's a lot of reactive work that we do, and running a lean organizations mean that you're always jumping on like queries and like always working on the questions that come your way, and you just jump on it right away. Having said that, that's actually not a really scalable way of doing it, and we have to figure out a way how to be a strategic partner rather than just being a reactive support. And especially when you're working for a young company, I think it really is a different ball game altogether, right? Where, for example, when I started at Dropbox, we had made an investment in analytics first, where we were like trying to understand like front end data and not a lot of like data engineering investment. However, at product board, it was the other way around, where we had made a lot of like data engineering investments, and we haven't made a lot of like data analytics and like data science investments. So depending on like how your company decides to do it, there are different challenges. And I think the challenges that we faced with like data engineering having been invested heavily and not so much on data analytics and data science is there was no developed understanding of like how do you write queries, how the tables are structured, how do we extract the data, how do we like make sense of the data, how do you utilize data to be on top of health of the business. And there was a definite disconnect between how the table should be connected from an architectural point of view versus the consumption point of view. So there was a lot of like time spent on troubleshooting. Even like when asked a simple question, there's like a field that is available in like multiple tables. How do you know which tables to use, and how do you know which one is accurate? How do you know which one is maintained? So there was a lot of like exploration and analysts had to do. And being a global team, my data engineering team was situated in Prague, and most of the analytics team was situated in US, some in Canada, and some in Dublin. But with a global distribution team, there's not going to be a lot of like face-to-face time. So plus time zone played a challenge. So it was like really difficult to do streamlined data exploration, and we needed a solution for that. And I have a illustration on the right on just to sum up, but like without the data catalog in place, there's a lot of like tribal knowledge. Again, very common in startups. People come and leave, and there's a lot of knowledge that lives with these people. Onboarding is really slow, and there's like inconsistent exploration. But if you are able to get a really good data catalog tool, which we'll talk about later on how I explored it, but we can have a shared source of truth and really good onboarding and data layer. So I think this is going to sound like really familiar for most of the folks in terms of the data ecosystems. We usually have data ingestion tools or some still manual scripting, but we have like data ingestion tools that would ingest the data in Snowflake. Then we would model it, and we would create an semantic layer and consume the data from there. Looker is a very different, at least at product board, we have set up Looker in a very different way, where Looker explores where our semantic layers, and all the data, all the business logic was nested in Looker. So while this sounds all good, I think it was like really difficult, and the developer-centric nature of DBT and Looker, for those who are familiar with Looker Explorers, made it really difficult to understand the source, the lineage, the business definitions, how's the data going from one place to another, where exactly should we be referring to. I think while there are like other solutions that we're using at Kong, but this is like generally a common pattern of the data ecosystem. What really was a challenge for us at product board was the rigidity of the Looker explorers, because while they acted as a semantic layer, it was like really nested in. We found it really difficult to like explore, understand the business logic, understand who's the stakeholder who has defined this logic, or even the data engineer who has actually put this business logic in the system. That made it really difficult for an analyst who's going to be a front-facing person for any of the stakeholders to actually answer the questions accurately as much as possible. Some people find it like really easy to go into GitHub code and try to understand like the lineage, like derive the lineage from there. But sometimes it's not like as straightforward, and it's not as intuitive for most of the users. I've written here that analysts and PMs struggle, but overall, not only analysts, data scientists, but all the stakeholders struggled, because as I said, like there was like one field common across four tables, only one being maintained, but how do you know which one? So we were actually in a very challenging environment, even though if you reach out to the data engineering team, you would probably get an answer that, hey, this is the field that you need to use. But again, because of the lack of documentation, the knowledge lived within their heads and within some of the documentation that existed. So the solution we are thinking about was coming up with a data cataloging tool or a data lineage tool that would probably give us that visibility into the data, the fields, the tables that we need to use. So as I've explained in my previous slides, there was a lack of visibility overall, and that was a challenge. We used to have a public channel for data analytics, data science, and data engineering team where external stakeholders would come in and ask questions. And we realized that a lot of the questions were like recurring. Uh, what table do we use? What metric do we use? Um, and it was like after like every 4 or 5 days, we'll get a repeated question. And data engineering team would get frustrated that, hey, why do I need to answer that again and again? And doing the documentation in like a Google Doc or Notion is not really intuitive, and it doesn't come naturally to the data teams. That if you have like if you develop an FAQ doc or like a documentation or like proper documentation of like what each table and what each field means, it's very difficult to do it in a Google Doc or a Notion. And so this was definitely a challenge. And not only that, the data team was getting frustrated with answering these questions again and again. The product board stakeholders were kind of like frustrated as well, that they have to reach out for the simplest of the things. Um, I know like there are lots of like dashboarding solutions that allow you to understand like which exact field are you using in a dashboard, and then intuitive people would go in and explore and identify the field to be used for their further exploration. But not everyone was like really handy with Looker. So that definitely posed a challenge. And lastly, uh, when I was building the team, I realized that with the lack of documentation, it was really difficult for new hires to like get onboarded or like even start writing basic queries to begin with. Um, where a lot of people that I hired in US did not have any prior Looker experience, so they did not find it intuitive to use Looker Explorers. But I think Looker is becoming more popular now, and people have experience with Looker some way or the other. But at that time, it was like definitely a newer tool, and people found it like really difficult to get their hands dirty with Looker. So now we knew the problem statement, we knew the solution that we wanted to go towards, and we wanted to understand like what tool do we bring in. We did a lot of research, and we again, when I say we, there's a lot of like representation of the data engineering and my team that I'm talking about here. But we evaluated tools like SelectStar, Atom, Data Hub. My brother is a data engineer as well. And I had compared some of his research as well. He was doing something similar in his company at Zendesk around the same time. Plus, at Dropbox, we had used Calibra. Unfortunately, maybe the tool was still developing then, and we did not really find it intuitive to use Calibra. So we started our exploration with SelectStar. I think from the from the budgeting point of view as well, it was like really good for us. So we started with that, and we just wanted to find a tool that's not a lot of heavy effort on the data engineering side, because at the end of the day, data engineering teams were like being forced to like come up with something like this, like a data lineage or data catalog tool, which would help their stakeholders. But data engineering teams did not want to put in like too much effort in like documentation and like making sure that people find it easy to navigate around, because in their head it was easy to just ask a question in Slack and get an answer to. So with that being said, when we were doing some research on SelectStar, we realized that it seamlessly integrates with your dbt and Snowflake. There's an easy search mechanism within SelectStar, and you can visually see like how the data is flowing from one source to another. There's not a lot of maintenance required in terms of the lineage itself. And also what I love the most within the tool was ability for all the editors to go in, update the definitions, be really detailed as much as possible in terms of, hey, this definition was changed as per this stakeholder. So again, there's a lot of you're not starting on a blank slate. It actually gives you all the connections, and now it's about like how mature do you want to make SelectStar. And that's something that really hit with us because we realized that we can definitely partner with data engineering, and it can be a joint data effort to make sure that our data lineage and data catalog is like really solid and can be used across the board. So I've touched upon some of these, but again, right, the documentation that I mentioned in Notion on GitHub is not like really intuitive to data teams. It's not that I've never seen this, to be honest. Teams would go in and like document in detail about every field and table that exists, but still we attempted it in the past. As I mentioned, there was a lot of like manual exploration, lack of like visibility into ownership as well. But with the implementation of Select Star, because as I mentioned that it seamlessly integrates with your DBT and Snowflake, there was an immediate impact. There was immediately a visual way of understanding how the data is flowing from different tables to warehouse, from warehouse to the explores and the dashboards that is being utilized. And I think that connectivity post the warehouse to Looker Explores and some of the dashboards, I think that was super golden for us because we need for some of the curated dashboards, we were able to understand where exactly the data is coming from. And let's say if I have to explore further, I know which data source to go to make sure that I'm replicating the same results and exploring them further. And obviously the ability to search and search for a particular field was an added bonus as well. Overall, if I were to think about the impact it had, I think it improved the relationship between all the data teams internally because there was not a lot of like friction now with Select Star. There's not a lot of like back and forth questions that you have to ask. Not that data analytics is getting frustrated for asking the same questions again and again. And on the same side, on the other side, data engineering is not getting frustrated for answering the same questions again and again. Now there's a common place where they can identify the fields to use and understand like how do they go about with data exploration. But not only internally, I think within external stakeholders as well. Earlier there was uh, a lack of trust within the data that we are putting together. We had Looker as a really democratized solution, so anyone can go in and put together a dashboard. So there were like bunch of dashboards that were floating around, some even from the executives, and then executive would look at the data and say that, hey, my data doesn't match with yours, and I believe mine is. And so these kind of explanations were like much easier, where we could say that, hey, just like go look at the Select Star and see like, are you using the right field? Are you actually understanding that if you're using it from the correct data source or not? That really helped us to build confidence in our team and data engineering team and overall in our data ecosystem where people could heavily rely on our metrics and dashboards. And it changed habit as well, where instead of like someone like going rogue and starting to write queries, they now had built a habit of going to Select Star, understanding which feeds to use, referring to the dashboards which are curated, and then spending some time on Looker and Select Star, and then starting to write the queries. And I think that was a big change rather than like directly jumping into writing the queries. Excuse me. I think with any other tool, as most of the data folks here might be familiar, it's it's all about usage and adoption. If you get the fanciest tool and it's not adopted because it's not natural to the flow, it's not going to work. I think Select Star was in a similar space for us. We wanted to make sure that if we are making an effort, we wanted to make sure that it is well adopted. The trick that really worked for us, some of these is like ideally like how I would do it in the future as well. But I think it's really critical for any tool when you're onboarding that you find a champion or someone who's your stakeholder who's like a little data savvy, like a data savvy PM who you pilot with, or like a data savvy leader whose org you pilot with, and just run with it. So I think that's something that we try to do, where we found a product team which is data driven, which the team that is really looking forward to the feedback loop to the product to make sure that their product is making the decision based on the data, and they are actually driving the business forward with the data rather than intuition. And so we started with that team. I think that that helped us to make sure that they building that habit with that team actually gave us confidence in SelectStar as well, that they were able to use it, and we were able to when we were able to reach out to other teams, we were able to share the best practices within that small portion of the team. Some of the best practices I've listed here. One of the things that we started doing, I'll call out one of those things, is using it in the Slack threads. Let's say if someone asks me questions, rather than like giving them a direct answer, we would like share a select star link, or like have them go to select star first and try to have them explore first, like where the data is coming from, understand the data lineage. And I think because of the visual aspect of select star, it became like really easy for people to like go to select star as well. They did not really find it difficult to they did not feel like they're onboarding on a new data tool which they don't want to get familiar with. And I think that that actually the low entry barrier actually made it like really easy for us to get org-wide adoption. Excuse me. Okay, I'm talking about driving org-wide adoption again here, but so I'll quickly wrap it up on how I approached it. But as I mentioned, rolling out is the key. We start off with identifying the stakeholder who's like really data driven, and they want to make sure that they are um, taking the decisions for the product or any department they're in charge of based on the data. And we try to make it as natural as possible, so that they are not like learning a new tool, they're not like adding a lot of other things to their steps on launching a product feature or like an experiment. And we SelectStar was the kind of a tool where you can just like send a link and they can explore on their end. So that really worked out. And the other thing that we did, as I mentioned, was we were like heavily pushing people to SelectStar by sending them Slack links, by sending them, asking them to log into SelectStar, asking them if you have you checked in SelectStar first. And even in our dashboards in Looker, we would like add hyperlinks to SelectStar as well. That would make it easier, um, not only to understand lineage, but at some point it kind of served as a business glossary as well, which is a really tricky thing for a younger company where the documentation or some of the things data which are not sexy are not really documented or like not spent enough time on. And so that really helped us in terms of making sure that people are going to select star again and again, and making sure that they're asking questions after they've done some research. That saved us a lot of like back and forth and time answering these questions. And in terms of the BI integration workflow, which is the front-facing part for us, being analyst and the data science team, I think dashboarding QA is like it became like really easy because of this, and we were able to understand lineage. New analysis build, explore the data upstream became like really easy as well. And if you are changing like any schema, the change management became more streamlined as well. So I can share an example from Kong where when the data reaches Hex, which is our BI tool, it goes through a lot of like transitions. First, engineering census data via Kafka streams that lands in our Snowflake instance. Then we use dbt to model it out, and then we have semantic layer, and that semantic layer gets consumed in our Hex dashboards, which are being referred across the company. The semantic tables that we have built, those get consumed by the revenue ops teams as well. So if you look at the chain, it starts off with engineering team, then it's product analytics team, and then it's the revenue ops team that consumes it. Again, there are like too many other layers like governance, compliance that I'm skipping here, but these are the major three teams that would go in and change the data schema. Having said that, if engineering decides to change something, they do not know like which teams need to be made aware. Similarly, if as analytics, if we change something, we are not really aware that which revenue ops tables or dashboards would be impacted. So having a solution like SelectStar not only allows me to understand the upstream impact, but also the downstream impact. So the change management and the communication protocol is like really can be really streamlined. And as I said, this was definitely a boon for us because that allowed us to be more organized within the different kind of data teams that we had at a company, and that would help any company that are trying to be data organized and they are trying to become a mature data organization. All right. So now this is something that I'm really proud of because we wanted to onboard a tool, but we wanted to make sure that it's not just a tool that is fancy and that is being integrated into our system. We wanted to analyze the impact it has had on the work lives of different data folks or PMs. I've not really spoken about the stakeholders, the impact it has had on productivity for the stakeholders. But like if I think of it from an analyst point of view, uh, as I mentioned earlier, there was a Slack channel where where we were being asked like repeated questions, and we were spending a lot of time answering those questions, partnering with data engineering, then worrying about the time zone differences. So it was a long process, and the SLAs were like super delayed to get to an answer to our stakeholders. And obviously, leaving aside frustration, I think tactically speaking, we if we were to quantify it probably is about 4 to 6 hours per week. Uh, Also, for a lean organization like ours, we wanted to make sure that we are able to make our stakeholders self-serve as much as possible. Just based on the volume of questions that had reduced post the launch of SelectStar, I think I can say if I were to quantify it, I would say that this reduced the dependency on the data team by about 30 to 40%, which is significant considering that our stakeholders were almost like everyone in the company, and they were reaching out to us. Like everyone had Looker access. Tops down, we were a very data-driven question company, and we were asked to talk in numbers as much as possible. Everyone was a stakeholder helping the entire company or like reducing the dependency on the data team by 30-40% for the entire company was like really, really significant. The other thing which was like really challenging for us was when someone onboards, it was really difficult for them to like even get started with the basic queries. Again, as I said, like Looker explorers were like really nested, and it was really difficult to understand the business logic, understand the definition of a particular metric, and how do you even go about writing a query. And with the data lineage tool that we had with SelectStar, it became really easy for the new analysts coming on board to understand the data ecosystem, understand the schema, which is something that my first go-to when I am like working with a new team is like explain to me the data ecosystem, explain to me how the data flows from one place to another, what does the ERD look like, and this was kind of automated with SelectStar, and that really helps newer analysts as well. And overall, the combination of all of these things made our life much more easier because we were uh, all of these challenges were actually uh, blocking us from being a proactive team and being a strategic partner. And with we had become a really reactive team, but this freed up time, and we were able to do some proactive work as well. And in fact, like we reached a place where we were able to incorporate a lot of like proactive work in our OKRs as well. We would say that we need to do like 2 or 3 significant proactive researches every quarter. So this was definitely a boon for us because we were like going from this is the arc of a data team maturing within a startup and developing a solution which can be easy and adaptable across the company. Uh, we'll quickly talk about why this matters today. I think this is, in my experience at least, this is especially relevant for younger companies. I'm sure it is relevant for bigger companies as well. But I think we have what I've realized is there's a lot of like tooling that comes in, and there's a lot of like democratized tooling decisions that happen, especially in startups, where let's say marketing is comfortable with one tool and they bring on that. sales CS will bring on one analytical tool, and so also product analytics. So it becomes like a really complex data stack, and it becomes like really complicated to understand how the data flows from one place to another. And it just based on the comfort level that people are bringing in the tools. And with in a culture like that, it really is difficult to get a hold of business glossary, or like just governance overall, excuse me, to understand the data flow. And if at some point a leader gets replaced by another leader, there's a preference for another tool that needs to come in. So there's always a risk of like tribal knowledge getting lost. And in that complex environment, it is really critical that we understand all of this really well. And there's less dependency on an individual or an organization to understand the data schema. Overall, I think all data leaders would agree, hopefully, the goal is always to build a self-serve culture where we reduce the dependency on the data team and we are able to move forward and do a lot of like predictive, prescriptive kind of analytics and work that would help the business forward. So I think having governance and lineage understanding really helps us, because then your stakeholders become more self-serve and you have more bandwidth to do more exciting work to move the company forward. And lastly, goes without saying, it's actually not just about compliance, but it's about creating a safe and confident environment for the data thing, which is something that I realized um, working at Product Board as well. I'll try to quickly wrap this up, but I would say there's, with all of my experience with this, with utilizing this tool at Product Board, or generally speaking, building a developed data organization, I think it is critical to not think of data cataloging tools as just like data governance tools, but these are really like productivity tools. You can understand what is being utilized, what is not being utilized, what can be deprecated, how it can help you with compute cost, what are the most important tables that need to be maintained, how do you make sure that you go in every 3 months, clean up the documentation without actually having to spend effort in like maintaining Google Docs or Notion. That's something like really critical. So I would think of it as a productivity tool, not really a discovery tool. The other thing, again, something that worked for us is finding a pilot and going through with it and making sure that we're starting out small but working on the wins. So adoption is greater than implementation. And lastly, it is for, as I mentioned, one thing that I'm really passionate about is building like self-serve organizations and making sure that your stakeholders are able to self-serve as much as possible. And I think having a tool like this enables self-serve without like sacrificing trust. In fact, like building trust and making sure that the data teams get a seat at the table, and they just don't become like a support organization, but they become like strategic partners. So overall, I'd say, especially for younger companies, it is critical to invest in tools like this. But with that being said, yeah, I had a great experience using the tool, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Snehal. Super insightful. And also, I'm really glad that you covered how you have drove that adoption of SelectStar inside product board, and also measured the impact of what it actually looks like when you adopt the data catalog inside the company before and after.
Mhm.
I think the part that you really brought on is like this big trust, like that kind of got in place by having the tool. Obviously, it's not the tool alone, it's always also the process and onboarding that gets integrated together along with the tool. But having that trust and how that like turns the reactive work of data teams to be more proactive and strategic work time, as well as like really like unleashing the PMs and designers and others to just like move faster, is a true business impact that I think data teams can really drive beyond building,
Definitely.
pipelines and dashboards.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we do have some specific questions from the presentation that you gave. So we can maybe go through them first. So first of all, Akshay Gera asked about DBT. DBT has had a DBT docs in the past. They've also recently released ways to auto document tables and columns. I think this is a fairly now like a fairly standard documentation feature that a lot of tools are offering. What do you think are the things that SelectStar did that was different than just using DVT?
Yeah, great question. So to be honest, DBT definitely helps, but it's not like a full solution. Uh, so um, if we definitely use DBT's documentation capabilities and we utilize it within our teams as much as possible. But having said that, it is really great for the developers, especially those who are writing the models, because it can allow you to define metadata right in the code. But it wasn't enough for a few reasons, I would say. First is not everything lives in DBT docs. Not everyone, I mean, they're not really familiar or handy with it. And again, the one of the key things that we were targeting was the low barrier to entry for our stakeholders. So if they were to think of DBT docs, it would mean that they have to understand tool. It's a lot of like documentation reading, which was to an extent a little difficult. Uh, Plus, I think there's a little bit of like lack of context when you're thinking about DBT, because if you're thinking about end-to-end lineage from like where the data originates from, maybe not exactly like pre-Fivetran or anything like that, but once it lands in your warehouse, how does it flow across your data ecosystem? How does it get consumed in a Looker Explorer, and which dashboards are using it? I think that is something that you can get in SelectStar, and that's something that DBT lacks at the moment. And I think in my experience, what I've realized in the past is it there's always likelihood of like it getting out of sync if you're depending on like how organized you are and how mature your organization is. We even in fact now I use DBT docs, but again, we have to make a very significant proactive effort to make sure that it is maintained. But as I said, like SelectStar is like seamlessly integrated in your ecosystem. It gives a visual understanding. It can be used by someone who's like really non-tech savvy, and can be utilized for someone who is like a data scientist as well. I think DBT definitely helps, not a full solution. SelectStar, I would say, was more holistic solution for us at that time.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. There is also a similar question about lineage, because DBT also has lineage on DBT Cloud, and you can get cut table level lineage on the core side, I believe. So does that solve the lineage problem?
Yeah. Again, I would say it's
So
a
it's very similar. Yeah, answer, I
yeah.
guess.
Again, it solves part of the problem, but not the whole picture. Again, like if you're thinking about like the entire ecosystem, it's probably not going to give you an answer. It doesn't cover the entire stack. And again, the meta problem I had it was developer centric, and I think our stakeholders were varied. Then not everyone was from an engineering background who were like really comfortable getting into it, or like then like jumping onto a GitHub link and exploring how the code is structured and all of that. So the to get a full picture, I think DBT is limited in that sense.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. So I have some questions for you. I wanted you to elaborate a little bit more about how you have approached onboarding different types of stakeholders to the catalog, especially the ones that are outside of the core data team.
Yeah, great question. I think I covered some of it in my presentation, but I think the something that worked really for us was, or I this is my approach when we're onboarding any new tool. To be honest, is starting out small and focusing on adoption, not just like making it unnatural implementation across the boards. So we started off with piloting with a smaller organization, trying to understand how they are able to understand and actually understand the feedback properly, and understand like how do we even when we are sharing select start links, how do they even consume it? built a loom as well to understand like how do you navigate through Select Star. So starting off small, starting off with stakeholders who are a little tech savvy, and then spreading it, plus at the same time making them your champions for rest of the organization. I think that really worked for us because we started off with a product team which was tech savvy. The PM who was like really inclined. I think if I remember correctly, they had some data background as well. When once they became our champions to fellow product stakeholders or like even outside of product, I think that became easy. So instead of us suggesting to use that tool, they were like other people in the company outside of the data team suggesting to use the tool, or they would be in a, let's say, in a business review and they're like, hey, how do you get this? And they would like open up Select Star and like while sharing the screen, they'll say, hey, I got this way, and they're like, what tool are you using? That the natural like word of mouth really helped us.
That makes sense. Um, I guess like yeah, each different business domains as they are bringing their own context and use cases and tools, it also gets more
Yeah.
tricky. So starting from like one or two and see how that goes is a smart approach. So
Yeah.
when you are doing that rollout, what are some of the leading indicators that you are watching if this is getting adopted as you intended?
Interesting. Uh, I think to be honest, there are again being a being a data person, we can like get like really deep into this adoption metrics and productivity impact. But I think for us it was really easy because for us it was just about understanding the frequency of Slack messages, asking about the metrics and asking about the tables, the fields to be used, or like understanding which dashboard is the right one to use, if this is the right definition and all of that. So I think the volume of queries that we received in Slack asking those repetitive questions, the decline in that, or like the measure of the volume would probably be a good indicator of adoption. Plus, at the same time, number of, I think we, as a data team, we set a benchmark to set, whenever we are like responding to anyone, we set a benchmark that we respond with Select Star link. And I think that is something that we captured internally as well. Like internally, how effective have we been in promoting Select Star internally? So that is something that we were tracking. Like, did we miss any messages where we should have sent Select Star link, but we did not? And how many times we are actually sending it. So I think plus obviously like within Selectstar itself, you can think about like search queries per week and by like listing stakeholders. And I think that would probably help us like get a more direct answer in terms of the adoption.
Yeah, we've added a lot of analytics of the catalog now
Okay.
so that the data teams can see how many active users do you have, what are the top search keywords, who are the
Nice.
best contributors, new users, what's the documentation fill rate look like. I think these are all important metrics to be aware of so that you can also be confident about that rollout and adoption of the tool.
Makes sense. Lovely. I think for for me, this is 2023 mind
Right,
in
right.
terms of like how I was doing it. I'm sure the tool has matured much more at
For
this point.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are some advice that you would give to other data team preparing to roll out a data catalog like Select Star? Are there, when you look back and as you were putting this together, are there anything that you would also do differently if you were to do it again?
Uh, so to start off with your first question in terms of advice to like other people who are trying to implement this, I would say again something that really worked for me is like starting off small and then expanding rather than trying to make it unnatural to get it onboarded across the organization. Like find your pilot, make them your champions, and be responsive to the feedback and make sure that there's the natural conversation that helps them get onboarded to the tool. I think that is something that's like really critical. But yeah, I think that's something that that would really help you find champions outside of the data team that would help get broader onboarding within the organization. Regarding your second question in terms of like what I would do differently, I think this is with again like with any tool, right? You when you are confident, you can decide how aggressive or conservative you want to be in terms of like pushing the tool and making sure that this is a mandate now. I would say I could have been like a little more aggressive. In general, like when we are like implementing new tool, you know that this is working, then you need to get more opinionated and make sure that people understand that this is a mandate now. And if other teams are able to understand, this is part of your onboarding where you learn about the tool, you are able to navigate through the tool. And I think that is something that I would probably do differently. Like think about once I get to go from 0 to 10, how do I get from 10 to 100? Like in a much faster pace. So I would say just like not being too conservative after the pilot has worked.
I think that's a really good point you're bringing up. I think as folks in the product org or on the data org, we are very used to and are aware of building MVPs and having it to, kind of like more of a prototype, whether this works or not, see if it sticks, but then rolling it out and making sure this becomes the standard and is being actually leveraged in all parts of the organization. That itself sometimes, may not be always taken care of because there's something else or like some other new thing that you might need to prototype on.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good point, and it is something that we sometimes see in other data teams too, because they are using it and they love it, and now like they need to do the next part of the hard work of getting it out
Yeah.
and making it more opinionated and being aggressive about like the choice that they've made for
Mhm.
everyone.
Yep.
It's a really good point. And now I guess just kind of like looking at the future, a lot of changes happening in the ecosystem today in the data space. In terms of AI, what are some of the places where you are seeing and your team might be already using in the day-to-day workflow?
Do you mean specifically from data point of view or generally in my like day-to-day work?
More data point of view could be
Okay.
something that you might be doing day to day or your team's doing, or things that you want to implement in the future because you think it is the right sound application of AI in data.
Yeah. I think one thing that we are partially doing and one thing that we kind of want to invest more in is more natural language interfaces. For example, like for us, there's something that we are like planning to do in the near future. But let's say if I want to understand about a customer, I can. The data is all available there, right? There's Salesforce data flowing through to your instance, like Snowflake instance, and there's like product engagement data. We know their consumption patterns as well. We know like how they are navigating through this entire product, how many users they're adding, and all of that. So I think ideally we shouldn't be spending too much time on analyzing and understanding all aspects of a customer journey. There should be like more natural language interfaces where I can go in and just say that, hey, this is the customer. Tell me everything about it, and I can say that, hey, this was created this time. They added like so many users. They're currently using it these things. They have dropped usage of like these things which make them a likely candidate for churn in the near future, but they're still generating this much revenue, and this based on the prediction they would continue to consume this much in the next month or something like that. So it can become, I know like it's a heavy lift up front, but I think this a solution like this with a natural language interface can definitely help a lot of like stakeholders, where we are utilizing AI to provide an efficient output, but it's not just for the sake of like providing an output that's fancy, but that is actually consumable as well. The other thing that I can think of is, I know a lot of like tools do it, and I think most of the SQL tools do it right now is something that uh, I use it personally. We use Hex as a BI solution, and Hex has a built-in AI as well. So I love that as well. That the data tools itself are maturing so much in terms of the SQL or Python, where you can writing queries, like the hard skill of like writing query is no longer as big of a challenge as it used to be. You even when you start writing your query, you put in the first three letters, the column name is updated, and you are able to write a query, but you struggle with syntax. Then many times I go to Hex and just say that, hey, correct my query. Or I'm just sometimes so lazy that this is in a the data is structured in a weekly format, and I need to convert it in a weekly format, like just by adding like few more columns. Instead of writing query, I use Hex AI and just say that, hey, convert this monthly, add these 5 columns and group it by this. So I could still spend like 2 minutes writing the query, but when you have AI to utilize, you can do it in like even 5 seconds. So that's something that my team, I encourage, in fact, encourage my team to use AI as much as possible as well. So yeah, that's something that we currently use and plan to use in the future.
Cool. Yeah, we definitely see a lot of teams bringing their SQL needs to AI. It's something that we've seen a lot in Select Star as well. From just creating queries to updating the core existing queries that they have, and understanding like the join relationships, or what's the best way to or optimize the way that we are like getting answers today. I
Yeah.
think it's because I think there's obviously the creation of the query part, but then I think the bigger part where you end up spending on is validating if the answer is actually correct, if it's coming out in the format that you want. And when AI can help with that, like it really boosts your productivity.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and yeah, as I said, like the hard coding part, like I cringe like every time when someone is like struggling with the query. We should be
Let me open up
utilizing,
the terminal and then just write it again.
yeah, you should be utilizing the resources you have. Like it's just like unlocks you, helps you move faster.
Yeah, for sure. I also love the idea that you mentioned about this natural language interface to answer questions.
Mhm.
I have seen, and we are working on multiple aspects around how to make AI analyst to work better.
Nice.
At the same time, I think the parts that you're mentioning is about how a current data analyst at the company, like at Kong, like what the aspect that are important about that specific user, or how you guys look at the customer, is really different from company to company.
Yeah.
So if that can be embedded inside the AI analyst, I think that will just make the answers to be a lot more richer and accurate for the business stakeholders to consume. So I love that idea.
Yeah, yeah. This is something that we are pretty excited to. So also our stakeholders, but we are currently in the process of that initial heavy lifting. So, but yeah, I think it will, as you mentioned, that investment would definitely help a lot of. I mean, it has implementation across the industry.
Makes sense. And what are some of the then new development and announcements that you might have seen recently that's happening in the data industry, and why?
Yeah, that's a great question because it is evolving so fast. There's like
Yeah.
so much happening, and even in my ecosystem, there are so many tools I use. Every week we get an update that, hey, we've launched this, and everyone is trying to make their tool holistic. Where,
Yeah.
let's say, if it's a governance tool, that also trying to become an observability tool and a self-serving tool. So I think that I am really excited about this holistic nature of like tooling coming together, where right now it's like there's, let's say, Monte Carlo is different, then Select Star is different, and like everyone has its different capabilities. I am excited about the future where there's like a unified set or like a single tool that kind of works and gives me like solution to everything, where I don't have to onboard like many different tools, but I have a one solid tool that I can onboard and get solution to everything. So I think that is something that I'm really excited about. I see a lot of companies investing in that as well. Um, the other thing that I'm really excited about, and this is something that I personally find it super helpful when it comes to, I use AI for a lot of like documentation, lot of my like writing something up or like creating diagrams. I use it almost like a brainstorming partner. And I've seen this evolution of AI as well, where initially, I'm sure like you might have noticed, but initially it would just critique you, but it wasn't as opinionated. And now it has become lot more opinionated, which makes brainstorming even more healthier because then you're actually getting quality feedback. You're no longer like interacting with a yes man or a woman who is like just responding and like giving you information. But this is more feels like natural brainstorming where there's like actual critique, there's actual feedback, there are ways you can improve. And lastly, I think AI agents have evolved as well. I think again, the some of the challenges I have seen with AI agents is they are still like another tool that we need to onboard. It is not yet natural, at least to some of the things that I have worked on. It's not yet natural yet. But I really love the evolution of the AI agents in the last, let's say, 1 year. I think, right? AI agents have come up so much and they're doing so much. Um, one of the one of the products I closely follow is Periscope Chat, and they are building an AI agent, but they are building it in a really smart way, and they are like really making it natural language oriented. They're making it or to serve like diverse use cases and all of that. So they are not only applicable for tech industry, but they're applicable for like let's say someone who's running a manufacturing department or something like that. So I think the AI agents evolution will probably become like even more fruitful in the hopefully not even in like next 12 months, maybe like we could see something crazy in the next 6 months itself.
Yeah, it is definitely a development that we're also very excited about because with MCP and also making the interfaces to just be able to build agents much faster. There's the internal development side, but also the external integrations between the tools is going to get much easier. I gotta check out that tool. I mean, if they have different ways that and more like close to the use case model of agents that they're building, I think that's worth noting for sure. Well, Snehal, thank you so much. This was a great session. I'm so glad that you were able to share your story from Kong and more on product board about how you have utilized and also drove impact with Select Star. So thanks again. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for attending.